Alexander County Veteran Service Officer, and today I am with George Wood. George, would you tell me a little bit about yourself, date of birth, where you were born, and the community where you live?
Yeah, I was born in November 28th, 1946 in Catawba.
Okay.
In Catawba County of North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated out of elementary school at Sweetwater in Hickory.
Okay.
And I never graduated out of high school. I went through the 10th grade. I quit when I was 14 and went back and then went through the 10th grade. And I knew I was going to have Algebra 2. Mm-hmm. And I didn't. I just barely passed Algebra 1, so I got to thinking about that, and I think, well, I'll never graduate if I have to. I didn't realize I could do geometry.
Right.
But I didn't realize I could do that. I was worried about algebra, you know. And so I thought, I was sitting in Raleigh. I was driving a blind man back and forth to get his master's in English. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting up there in the UNC library and thinking, well, why waste your time? So I decided I'd go down and join the Army. So I did that day.
There you go. What community do you live in now?
I live in Ellendale of Alexander County.
Okay. And what did you do prior to joining the military? Did you have a job or?
No, I just went from vacation time between the 10th and 11th grade. I just went up to the Raleigh recruiting office and joined the Army. Okay.
How did you feel about the military or the war that was going on at that time?
Well, at the time, Vietnam War didn't register that much.
Mm-hmm.
When I was going in, you know, it was just starting.
Right.
And when I went in, I just went in more or less to give relief to my stepfather, who was a blind man trying to raise 5 kids. Mm-hmm. And I figured I'd be one less mouth to feed since I wasn't going to be able to pass algebra to graduate high school anyway.
Right.
And so I didn't give it thought one way or the other. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to, you know, have something to do, get out of the way of one less mouth to feed.
Right.
So that was the way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Which unit were you with in the Army?
Well, I was originally, I can't remember the units. I was originally with, I went to basic at Fort Gordon, Georgia. Mm-hmm. Maybe a mention of note, we was the last persons, we were the last platoon to qualify with the old M1 World War II rifles.
Okay.
They'd come out with the M14. We were the last one to use them.
Okay. What was the highest rank you achieved in the military?
The highest rank was acting 3-stripe sergeant. My highest actual rank was Spec 5.
Okay. And how long did you serve?
3 years.
Okay. Did you serve overseas? I think you said earlier that you went to Vietnam.
Yeah, well, I went to Germany first.
Okay.
After we was in AIT. Mm-hmm. I was just, going through survey school. Well, halfway through survey school, they come to me and said, "You can't be here." And I said, well, "How come? You put me here." He said, "You don't have a high school education." So the next morning, the platoon sergeant sent me up this building. I was up there about 5 hours taking 5 tests. Mm-hmm. And then about a week later, I got my Army GED in the mail so I could finish survey school.
Okay.
But at the time, the way it worked out, they were going to send the whole survey training to Germany. Mm-hmm. Well, they had come and asked for volunteers for people to go back through 4 weeks of training to become flash rangers. Mm-hmm. Now that's sort of you have to be able to be a surveyor to be a flash ranger. So mm-hmm. They asked for survey volunteers. So I thought, well, that'll throw me back to about Christmas time. Maybe I can go home for Christmas. So I volunteered. There's 5 of us. Our whole class consisted of 5 people. And I found later on, when I got out of the Army, there was only 56 of us in the whole Army. Mm-hmm. But Anyway, so I volunteered to go back, recycle, and go through flash ranging school, so I could go home for Christmas. I figured, the cadre and stuff would be off for maybe 4 or 5 days for Christmas, and I could just run home right quick,
Right.
But dumb me, I didn't know the Army that well, so we trained right on through Christmas.
Yeah. What did you envision the military would be like after you joined? Did it disappoint you, or were you surprised? Or
Well, I was really surprised that it wasn't any harder than what it was. I'd heard the old World War II, and a friend of mine taught me how to fish and hunt was a Korean War veteran, and I was really surprised that the training wasn't any harder than what it was.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. I was 17 years old, 6'2", and weighed 140 pounds. So it was pretty rough, but I was surprised it wasn't any rougher.
Right. Where was your basic training?
At Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Okay.
They trained artillery.
Okay.
And my training consisted of they called us target acquisition. They trained flash rangers, sound rangers, surveyors, FDC people, fire directional control. We're all considered target acquisition.
Okay.
We're not part of the actual artillery unit.
Okay. Do you remember anything about your basic training? Were you nervous, excited, or scared?
Well, I remember I spent 10 straight days on KP.
Did you get in trouble?
Well, yeah. See, when we left Raleigh, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or anything, but when we left Raleigh, I scored the highest on the entrance exam. So the sergeant up there, the ones that was going to Fort Gordon, Georgia for basic training, most of them were draftees at the time, put me in charge of the paperwork and all that stuff. Well, when we got down there, our platoon sergeant took one look at me, and I looked like a little overgrown kid, and it just made him mad. And so me and him never did get along, and he was always picking on me. I never done anything right. I don't care how well my shoes was polished and how good a spit shine I had on them. It wasn't good enough.
Right.
Well, we was having a colonel's inspection one day, and I got to thinking, I'm going to get even with him. So I knew that right before the inspection, he'd call certain people forward to examine their weapons, and break it down into the 3 basic components. I knew I'd be one of them, so I went and filled my trigger housing full of graphite grease. Well, sure enough, he called me to break my weapon down and make me go back and re-clean it. And when he broke it down, that trigger housing full of graphite grease fell on his uniform. And he had the store-bought. He didn't have the issue Class A. He had the store-bought
Right.
dress greens, so to speak. And so anyway, that graphite grease ain't gonna come out of him. So he put me 10 straight days on KP. Well, the 11th, no, it was the 10th day I was on KP. A colonel came in and was wanting breakfast after everybody else had left. And the mess sergeant, now maybe all gone doing other stuff. I think he was probably in his office, getting his orders together, and the other cooks and stuff, they was taking their after meal break. So he come up. He asked me if I could fix him his breakfast, and he told me what he wanted. So I went ahead and fixed it for him. And anyway, after he finished, the mess sergeant come out of the office, and he said, he told the mess sergeant, he said, I want this cook to fix my breakfast every morning when I come in. And the mess sergeant said, he ain't a cook. Said he's on KP, and the colonel said, I've seen him in here for the last week. He said, well, he said he's been on KP for 10 straight days. And colonel looked at me and he said, is that true? And I said, yeah. He said, and you're in basic training? I said, yeah. He asked me who my platoon captain was, and I told him. Well, about an hour later, here come my platoon sergeant down there and took me up to the office, and the colonel's in there chewing that captain out. And he told that platoon sergeant, he said, if this man has to be recycled because of missing so much training, he said, you're going to be a private. So that platoon sergeant had to, usually they went home at 5 o'clock.
Right.
you know, and left us up to the acting cadre, you know, for the rest of the evening. And he stayed to 8 o'clock every night catching me up on the training I'm in, so I wouldn't be recycled.
So you still got back at him.
I still got back at him.
Did you make any friends while you were in the military, and did you keep in touch with them when you left?
Well, the only friend I actually made, I mean close friend, I had a lot of acquaintances,
Right.
was a big guy. He's a longshoreman in New York. I went to Germany before I ever went to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of these, he was easygoing, which is a good thing, because he was probably 6'6" and probably weighed around 280.
Right.
He's he's an easygoing fella. And we just, I don't know what, there's just some people you meet,
Right.
and you just have an instant liking for them. We had that. And when they called me to go to Vietnam, he carried me down 3 flights of stairs and out to the Jeep, so I wouldn't have to walk it.
Well, how nice.
But he told me when I come back to get in contact with him in New York, he's a draftee, and that we'd go out and party and have all the wine, women, and song that I'd want, but I never did.
Okay. What did you think of your officers?
Well, my officers I've had, in our command was good. I've met a few that I didn't care about, but
Right.
I was lucky and I had good officers.
Okay. And what was your job in the military? Exactly what did you do?
I was, I never did actually have a survey MOS because I went farther and got the Flash Ranger. But I actually had 2 MOSs. In Germany, I was just a regular Flash Ranger. They'd put us out around the impact area. They'd shoot Honest John or Long John missiles out, and we'd get the azimuth. There'd be 3 or 4 posts set up. We'd get the azimuth of where it landed, and then we'd plot the crosshairs of where they landed, and wherever your azimuth of say 3 OPs crossed, that would be where the either artillery rounds or the missiles landed. That would be the exact spot where it hit.
Right.
And we done that over in Germany quite a bit, but in Vietnam, I was a combination of sort of a forward observer and a searchlight operator. Of a daytime, we'd search for enemy activity, and if there wasn't any, now we'd call start a fire call from a gridded map, but they're not that accurate. So we'd have to make sure that if we called fire, once it was verified that there was enemy activity, there couldn't be any of our troops real close to them, because
Right.
we wasn't that accurate. And we'd call in fire, and they'd fire out around here, and then we'd adjust it until they got to the target. Then we'd call fire for effect. And then the whole artillery battery would kind of obliterate the area. That was of a daytime. Of a nighttime, we operated the old carbon rod negative disc type searchlights. And they would, if they suspected the enemy to be in a certain area, we'd be up on a big mountaintop. And if they expected the enemy to be moving in a certain area, or one of the scouting squads would detect, then they would plot the position on their grid map and call it in to us, and we'd set the azimuth and elevation from where we was to try to hit the enemy with the first flash of the light, so to speak. And that was my second MOS, a searchlight operator.
Okay. What was your most memorable experience?
I guess getting shot down in a helicopter over a rice paddy.
Okay. Tell us about that.
Well, we was, like I said, I hated KP after 10 days of KP, and so when I got over there, originally they had civilian KPs, but they called them trying to poison the food one time, so they wouldn't allow them inside camp, so we had to pull KP again. and anybody E4 or Spec 4 and below had to pull KP. Well, there's an alternative. You could volunteer to go to machine gun training and ride machiner on helicopters.
Okay.
So when my time would come up for KP, I went and qualified on the M50 machine gun. And when it come my time to pull KP, I'd volunteer for a machine gunner on helicopter duty and get out of it.
Okay.
And we was out on patrol one time, and they shot a chopper down, and we landed in a rice paddy. There was about 5 of us, in a row going. We landed in a, we didn't actually crash. The pilot was a good pilot, and he was able to tilt the helicopter blades, and it come down under fairly control. Even though we didn't have power, he kept it under fairly decent control. And we hit that rice paddy, it may be like hitting a wall at 20 miles an hour. So we didn't really get hurt or nothing,
Okay.
But they started shooting at us. So you talk you talk about the so-called proverbial willing to eat. Well, we was willing to eat that buffalo dung in that rice paddy. We got down to the low end as we could get.
Right.
Well, when the couple choppers in front of us seen us go down, they swung back around and come over, and we grabbed their landing gear, and held on to it, and they pulled us out. And that was a weird feeling. You're looking up inside that chopper see that other machine gunner sitting up there with bullets hitting the side of that chopper, and you're hanging on like this.
Oh, mercy. But all of you were okay, and you were all...
Well, no, one of the pilots got hurt.
Okay.
But, they was able to send, he didn't get to come out with us, but we had to leave him behind, but the choppers kept swinging around till they could get an infantry squad to come in and get him.
Oh, okay. So was that the only close call or hairy situation you had, or were there others?
Oh, I guess that was the closest or the scariest I got. I wasn't scared at the time. You don't have time.
Right.
You're just trying to survive. But after the chopper got us out of the ambush, so to speak, and set us on the ground where we could climb in, whew, boy, you talk about the knees are knocking now.
I bet so. What weapons were you assigned to? What did you use mostly?
We only had personal weapons. Now we didn't get M16s because we was artillery. So that M16 were reserved for your more combative type people.
Correct.
So they issued us M14s. They're awkward and heavy, and especially in the jungle. Well, I was I went out with the 2nd and 8th one time, infantry. I was dumb. I wanted to see what war was like. So there's a couple times I actually went out with the infantry. When they were, 2nd, 8th was a hard luck outfit, or the 1st Cav, and they were a hard luck outfit, and they lost several people. So sometimes I joined one of their squads going out, just to see what they done. Like I said, I was 19 and stupid. So anyway, we got in a little firefight, and I was mostly behind, because I was, I wasn't an experienced infantryman.
Right.
I was just a body to fill in the numbers that they needed. And they had a little firefight just lit up in front of us. Well, when by the time I got there, the firefight was pretty much over. It was just a small scrimmage. Anyway, there's a dead Viet Cong there, and I picked up a grease gun. If you know what they are, they're sort of an automatic, a long automatic 45. They shoot 45. They're called grease guns because they got a cooler that runs on the barrel, so you can fire them pretty often. And they look like a grease gun you used to put grease in cars with. And so I picked one of them up, and after that, when they'd go out and set us on a mountaintop or something for observation or searchlight operating, I'd take that grease gun with me instead of that big old awkward M14. I'd take that grease gun with me, and because in jungle, you don't shoot that far anyway. If we was to have to defend ourselves, that would probably been better than that M14 anyway. So I used to carry that.
Okay. What was everyday life like? Was the food good, or did you get enough to eat?
Well, it was I'll tell you a story. We didn't have any trouble. Like I said, when we went out, they used to carry the generator and searchlights out on the mountaintops and stuff. We could load up a duffel bag full of C rations and stuff, and throw it on and strap it to the generator. So we carried it, and a lot of times they would try to fly us in a hot meal. They called it a hot meal, but the time they flew it out to us, it was cold. But
right.
They try to fly us out a hot meal at least once a day. Then, like I said, we carried C rations and stuff. But I went out with. They sent us out to an infantry outfit. Been in the field for about 3 months one time, and I don't know why, but I went to the PX and I bought up a bunch of canned stuff. I still don't know why I done it. A bunch of canned drinks and stuff, and half filled my duffel bag with canned drinks and candy bars and stuff from the PX, and then I filled the rest of it with C rations. Well, we got out there. This unit, as a part of the first cab, had been out there for 2.5 months, and they was running short on rations. Well, we got our searchlights set up and everything. They sent us out to illuminate their perimeter line that time instead of trying to spot targets. We got a searchlight set up on their perimeter line and everything, and I went and got me a box of C rations out and got me one of them little heater things that we used to heat them with, and I sat in there eating me some C rations, and I went and got me a Coke out of my duffel bag and popped the top on it, and I was just sitting there eating my supper. And I happened to look up, and man, I was surrounded by other GIs, just looking at me. And that one guy come up and he says, "You gonna eat that biscuit from that C ration?" I said, "Probably not." I said, "They're kind of tough out of the can like that." I said, "Probably not." He said, "I'll give you 50 cents in script for it." I said, "Huh?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "We're on short rations." Says, so I know some of them was on short rations after I'm telling the story.
Right.
And so he said, "I'll give you 50 cents in script for that can of that canned biscuits out of them C rations." And this other guy come up to me. He says, "Is that duffel bag full of C rations?" And I said, "No, it's only half full. The rest of them's candy bars and drinks." And boy, you ought to heard the offers I got. I was offered as much as $5 for Coke. And I got to thinking, man, these guys must be pretty bad shape. And I thought I was supposed to be out there for a couple of days anyway. So I just took my duffel bag and dumped it out and told them to help themselves. And I'll guarantee you that if we'd have got hit that night, I'd have had a dozen people around me make sure I didn't get hurt.
That's probably true. When you were out at the sites and stuff like that, did you have a tent or did you just sleep on the ground? Did you bathe? I mean, tell me about that.
The bathing part was pretty slack. I spent 3 months on one mountaintop, and there wasn't no showers and nothing there. But we'd get a day off. There's 4 of us up there. And we'd get a day off once a week. One of us would go down one day, and we'd get a day off once a week. And we'd go down to our barracks, and we'd shower and stuff. But once a week ain't very much when it's 100 degrees out there and the humidity's 90%.
Right. Did you keep in touch with people back home? And if you did, how did you do it?
No, I never got a letter, and I never sent a letter the whole time I was in the Army.
Okay. How did you handle being away from home and family?
I really didn't miss it that much. I guess Christmas time's the only time I really missed being home.
Right.
Because, like I said, I went there for a purpose, and that was be one less mouth to feed. Because my stepfather raised us on $32 a week, and there's 5 kids. And he was blind, and the only thing he could do was tune pianos. And he raised us on $32 a week, and I was glad. When I went in the Army, everybody's fussing about Army food. I don't want this, I don't want that. Me, I was eating high on the hog when I was in the Army.
What did you do for fun during your leave?
Well, I didn't. I really didn't have a what you call R&R or anything like that. I came home for Christmas between Germany and Vietnam. I volunteered for Vietnam from Germany. I tried to volunteer for Vietnam from basic training, but I wasn't old enough. I was still 17. So they sent me to Germany, and I volunteered over in Germany. You know, like I said, I was dumb. I don't know what war was like. You know, I was wanting to. You know, I didn't give thought to the smell of a rotten body being laying there for 2 days or nothing like that. You know, I never gave that my thought. I was used to watching war movies. You know, there's a lot of difference, but I was wanting to see what it was like. So.
Did you receive any awards or decorations for your time in the military?
No, I wasn't in that bad of a situation, and I'm not a hero type person. I just do what has to be done, and that's it. But so I got the Vietnam Battle Medal of Defense and the Good Conduct Medal and all that stuff. I got the basics.
Right. Do you still have any of your uniform photos or mementos of your time in the service?
The only thing I've got a picture somewhere of when I got busted from my E5 status in Vietnam back to E4, Spec 4 status. And but when I come back to the States, they give me my Spec 5 instead of acting sergeant. They give me Spec 5 back almost as soon as I reported. And I got a picture of where the captain and colonel was pinning my stripes on, and I still got my basic training. You know, it's like a yearbook thing and from school.
Right.
I still got it somewhere.
Okay. What was it like after the war? Do you remember how it was when you came home? And
Yeah.
Where did you come home to?
Well, I come into Seattle, Washington, and the main thing I remember, one reason I never joined any post military organizations until I was in my late 50s, was because when we was flying in, they had demonstrators on each side of the runways, along the fences, holding up signs calling us baby killers and all that stuff. And I got so mad, and it was so bad at the time that when we come in, they loaded us up on buses, like barred window buses, like they transport prisoners in. Took us way off out in the boondocks outside of Seattle somewhere, and issued us civilian clothes. They'd told us right before we left Vietnam to rotate back to not cut our hair for a couple weeks. They issued us civilian clothes and civilian airplane tickets and told us not to let anybody know we was military. And I mean, that was bad, and I stayed angry about that for years.
Right.
And even to this day, I've kind of got over it. But even to this day, if Jane Fonda's in the movie, Jane Fonda made a couple pretty good movies I'd like to have seen, but I wouldn't watch them because she was in it, and she was one of the instigators of it.
Right. When you came home, did you marry and start a family at that time?
I married a woman that already had a family.
Okay.
And we was married for 9 years, but she didn't work, and she had 3 kids when I married her, and we had one. So I worked 2 jobs, tried to keep the family up, and then I went to driving the truck, and I was gone, most of the time. And after about 9 years, I come home one day, and she moved somebody else in.
Oh,
so,
well, okay.
that was that.
There you have it. What's your occupation been since leaving the military?
For the last 35 years, I've been an upholster.
Okay. Are you active, or do you belong to any of the veteran service organizations?
Yeah, I belong to the VFW.
Okay. Was any of your family members or ancestors in the military?
Yeah, my father was in World War II. He was a Swabby, though.
Okay. What's a Swabby?
That's Navy.
Oh, okay. I probably should have known that. What would you say to the youth today interested in joining the military?
I would say that the military is a good training for self-discipline. They will make a man out of you. Now, I don't think our training is as intense today, except for maybe your more technical stuff. It's more intense, but the physical stuff, you know, when I was in there, you had an argument with your platoon sergeant. You put on gloves and went out behind the barracks and duked it out with him. You know, of course, he'd win.
Right.
But you know, we had that kind of stuff when I was in the military. You know, now they, you know, their physical, unless you've joined special forces or something, their physical training and stuff is not as intense as I don't think is what we was in.
Right.
But it still make a man out of you. You know, you still got to learn to follow commands. You still got to learn to obey the commands. And you know, and part of actually being a real man is you know, the youth nowadays, especially, you know, in their high school years and stuff, they seem to think that being a man is the guy who can get the most attention and you know, and be the spokesman for the group. But the true vision of being a man is being able to follow direction and doing what has to be done. And the military teach you that.
Right, right. Do you have anything else you would like to say or would like to share?
Well, I think I done shared all too much now.
All right. Well, George, I just want to thank you for talking to us and thank you for your service.
Thank you for the interview. Okay.